And it's interesting because I also, you see these trends on social media now. And the one thing that I'm finding is you get people on both ends of the spectrum who are very militant about their opinions, and you can be very militant about your opinions on social media and kind of get away with it. You have the people that are like,
Sure.
everybody needs to be on hormones. And then you have the people that are like,
Mm,
no, I'm going to be all natural. I'm just going to go through my life and do things natural. What I say is, guess what? There are so many options. I think it's personal choice. There's
yeah.
no right or wrong. It's what you feel comfortable with, and in conversations with a doctor who is trained in how to manage these hormones.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like that's very good advice for all medicine,
Yes.
right? Like you have to find what works for you and working with your doctor to make sure they're listening to you
Yes.
and and helping you through that. Welcome to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast, where we hold your sensitive nature front and center. Because your sensitivity is a gift that needs polishing up every day. In our world of high stimulation, there's rarely a chance to sit back, listen, and go deep. Join me as I hang out with highly sensitive women and the healers who support them as we dive deep into all things sensitive, healing from childhood wounds, cool alternative methods for growth, and all the ways your sensitivities make you a powerful force to be reckoned with. So let's take a drive or a walk, or let's get comfy on the couch with a soft blanket and beverage. You're in for some wholehearted, soulful conversations with truly amazing women like you. Let's grow a strong community of awakened, sensitive women together. Hi, and welcome back to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast. I'm your host, Biz Cush, and got a great guest today. We're talking about menopause and vaginas and all that good stuff. But before we jump in, I just want to remind you that the Circle of Sacred Sensitivity for Highly Sensitive Women is an open membership, and you can join anytime. You just need to reach out to me and I can send you the links. And it's a great community. We have lovely women who are a part of it, who meet up monthly with me live via Zoom, as well as there are all sorts of resources that are available through the membership as well. So if you want to know more about that, head to my website, elizabethcush.com, and click on the Circle of Sacred Sensitivity to find out more. Well, my guest this week is Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. And as I said, we are going to be talking about menopause and basically the importance of our pelvic health and our gynecological health. So it's a very interesting conversation. She's full of lots of expertise and knowledge. So let's jump in and talk to Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. Hi, Betsy, and welcome to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast.
Thank you so much, Biz, for having me. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
I'm excited to talk to you too. I feel like, I don't know if it's every season of the podcast, but I feel like it's been important to bring on guests who really validate the experience for women who are menopausal, perimenopausal, postmenopausal, like just that it's a thing that we don't doesn't get talked about a lot. Although I do feel like there is more focus happening now. But without further ado, if you could just introduce yourself and share a little bit about you and the work that you do.
Sure. I am officially the first board certified female urogynecologist in the United States, and I'm double boarded in obstetrics and gynecology, urogynecology, and the third in aesthetics. And I'm actually currently working on my fourth board certification right now in integrative medicine under Dr. Andrew Weil. So I practiced for 17 years doing pelvic reconstructive surgery. And then I've been saying that I'm retired because it sounds nice, but the truth of the matter is I'm medically retired after a car accident. I don't have a neck injury. I don't have the hand strength to do surgery anymore, but the truth is I kind of think I manifested that because I was working for a hospital at the time that was incredibly abusive to their their doctors. And lo and behold, I was like 1 month into this contract and I knew that it was not a place I wanted to be. And
Mm.
I literally I would be so exhausted. Like I would say things in my head like, man, I wish I could just have a car accident, like just enough so that I could get some rest, but not to be like incredibly injured. And I wasn't serious about that. But one day I was driving to
Of
work
course.
and somebody couldn't get to Walmart fast enough and pulled across 3 lanes of traffic into the back of my car. And I ended up having a little car accident and herniated some discs. And interesting enough, that was the only clause in my contract that could get me off of working for that hospital was there was a disability clause. So it was
Wow. Oh
the
my
one and only
gosh.
time I got fired and the one and only time I was very happy to no longer be at that job. So,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I honestly believe that it was the universe kind of coming in because I don't think I would have stopped on my own. And like you said, you put it out there and all of a sudden the universe goes, okay, great. We'll take care of that for you.
Right? Right. This isn't working. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Fast forward, I was at that time, then I was teaching and speaking and, traveling all the time. And I was speaking a lot on menopause. And somebody asked me a menopause question at one of the conferences. I don't know what happened. I don't know why I said this, but I blurted out that I was opening a menopause clinic. And like after it came out of my mouth, I went, oh, why did I say that? And then I was like, okay, that's terrifying because I wasn't planning on going back into clinical medicine. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? It makes perfect sense because I was getting really
Mm.
frustrated. And to your point, I agree that like menopause has not been spoken about enough in the past. Like right now, it's trending for whatever reason. But what was starting to
Yeah.
happen, I was seeing people on social media who were not qualified to be talking about it or giving advice. And I was getting really frustrated.
Wow.
So I think it was like this combination of something spoke through me and combined with frustration that I blurted this out because I knew that I could do it better than what I was seeing being done.
Mm.
So fast forward, that's what
Amazing.
I just did. I opened a menopause and actually andropause. So the men don't have it easy. Like they actually have their own change that they go through. So, and I was finding as I was working with
Interesting.
women, they would be like, hey, can you work
Mm.
with my husband or my boyfriend? Or like they're having problems too. And so we were like, sure, let's add that into the mix. So yeah.
Boy, boy, boy. Well, it's amazing how much our bodies go through as we enter this phase and how much is changing, but also how it impacts us emotionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
other thing is I'm finding is actually a messaging issue because I find some of my older patients that like maybe are like 70s or 80s, and I say like I have a menopause clinic. Their first response is, "Oh, honey, I've been through that a long time ago." And so this is
Mm.
I don't know where that message is coming from, and I'm trying to figure that out and trying to get the message out better that this is a phase that you go through that's like from the time you stop getting your periods the rest of your life is that menopausal phase or postmenopausal, or like, I guess our language doesn't fit what it is, but you have the
Right.
same health concerns. You might not be suffering through that perimenopause with the crazy ups and downs of the hormones, but you still have the same health concerns as the like that early menopause for the rest of your life. So it's still this continuum.
Mm.
I kind of like to explain it to people like a butterfly in that like your reproductive years are kind of like that caterpillar phase. And then
Hmm.
perimenopause is the cocoon. And if you've ever seen or read about what happens to butterflies in a cocoon, is fascinatingly enough, they completely dissolve, which is crazy that this happens in
Right.
nature. They completely dissolve and cellularly reorganize. And for those women that are going through that perimenopausal period, they probably feel like they're completely dissolving. That's a very tumultuous
Some of the time,
time,
that's for sure.
for some people.
Yeah.
And then, on the other side, you're a
Yeah.
butterfly and you're a butterfly the rest of your life. Like this is that new phase.
Mm.
So, yeah.
That's a lovely way to look at it. I know a lot of people, well, don't necessarily see it as beautifully as that, right? As this recreation of who we are. But I do think that there is this assumption of like, okay, perimenopause is like the hard stuff. Then you hit menopause and then it's just like, okay, I'm done. Like I just kind of move on from there. But I also want to address like, there are people that I know I guess when I was first starting perimenopausal symptoms, and at that time, I think there was still this feeling that like hormones were bad.
Yeah.
We should not be doing anything other than suffering through the symptoms that potentially are out there, right? And that has all changed, right?
Yes.
That dialogue around, yeah, how we can get help and relief from some of the more difficult symptoms.
Yeah, I unfortunately went through training, was just finishing my training when that all happened. It was literally like one day we are like, hormones for everyone. And then the next day we're like, no,
Mm,
hormones cause cancer and heart disease and they're terrible. And that was back in
right.
early 2000, so 2001 time when the Women's Health Initiative study came out. And what happened, unfortunately, with that study is it got reported in the New York Times and like it got blown up. So
Mm,
I just imagine like what would happen today if the same thing happened, but not in the newspaper. It happened over social media. Like it would have made people crazy. I mean, it did. Unfortunately,
mm,
like literally as doctors, our thing is do no harm. So we were pulling people off of their hormones left and right. So there was a lot of hot flashing, pissed off women that were miserable at this time. And, people were getting to the point where
right.
they're like, I don't care if it causes heart disease and cancer, like, give me my hormones back. And then
Yeah.
at the same time, there's a whole generation of women that missed out on hormones because they were going, oh my God, hormones are bad. I'm going to get cancer. Now they're
Right.
looking back at that study. There's so many factors. We realized it really got blown up it really got blown up in the media more so than it needed to be. And more of the issue is
Hmm.
the type of hormones that were used in that study. And they're what I like to
Mm.
refer to as non-natural hormones. So they're not the
Wow.
hormones that naturally occur in our bodies. And the explanation of, well, why do these hormones even exist? It's purely for business purposes because you can't patent anything that's naturally occurring. So, how does a pharmaceutical
Mm.
company make something that works in the body like a hormone that they can patent and protect their intellectual property and make money off of it? Is they take something
Wow.
that's naturally occurring and they tweak that molecule. They add a couple more carbon and oxygen bonds on there. And now it's this new novel compound that happened to work in the body somewhat like hormones. However, what we realize now, it was even in that study, it was the type of progesterone that was used was
Mm.
more of the issue than the non-natural estrogen. And in fact, in the estrogen only arm of that study, even though they were using non-natural estrogens, those patients did not have the heart disease risk. They did not have the breast cancer risk. And in fact,
Wow.
they had improvement in osteoporosis and in lower rates of colon cancer. So it was
Hmm.
specifically the estrogen progesterone arm that they found out. And we now know that type of progesterone is incredibly inflammatory. It happens to be
Mm.
processed in the body down a pathway that makes toxic metabolites, and those toxic
Mm.
metabolites can, I'm not saying it does, but can damage DNA. And when DNA is damaged, it can cause cancer. It doesn't mean it will, but it can.
Right.
So there,
Right.
and
Right.
unfortunately, those hormones are still on the market today. And I personally think it's criminal that those are still being sold on the
Oh,
market, even though we know, the issues. So I'm a big
that's
proponent of
horrifying.
we refer to as bioidentical. I think the word bioidentical has been a little
Mm.
overused. I kind of like call bioequivalent or natural hormones. It's what
Mm.
our body recognizes as natural,
Okay.
because we're finding out in research that those hormones are actually protective. And there was a big study that was done in France, and this is completely has flipped my training too. For many years as a traditional doctor was like, oh, hormones are bad, and I was scared to put people on hormones. I was scared to take hormones And now we're finding actually there was a study and it was, I think it was about 50-ish thousand women in France where they took women with breast cancer and women without, and they put them on hormones and they followed them over time. And they found even the women with a history of breast cancer didn't have any adverse outcomes
Wow.
compared to
That's
the other
crazy.
group. So now they're actually starting to see it may be protective in certain cases. But
Wow.
that's something, make sure you're
Isn't that
not say,
insane?
blanket statement, it's safe for everybody. Make sure in your specific instance, you go over your doctor, with your doctor. But we're finding new things and we're like, wow, you know what? This might be, this
Yeah.
is a valid treatment option for people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I know. I have friends who have had incredibly extreme hot flashes to the point where, I don't know, it made life almost unbearable. And I know hormones really, really help them. They're a little bit
Yeah.
younger than me, but yeah.
And it's interesting
Yeah.
because I also, you see these trends on social media now. And the one thing that I'm finding is you get people on both ends of the spectrum who are very militant about their opinions. And you can be very militant about your opinions on social media and kind of get away with it. You have the people that are like,
Sure.
everybody needs to be on hormones. And then you have the people that are like,
Mm.
no, I'm going to be all natural. I'm just going to go through my life and do things natural. What I say is, guess what? There are so many options. I think it's personal choice. It's, there's
Yeah.
no right or wrong. It's what you feel comfortable with and in conversations with a doctor who is trained in how to manage these hormones.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like that's very good advice for all medicine,
Yes.
right? Like you have to find what works for you and working with your doctor to make sure they're listening to you
Yes.
and yeah, and helping you through that. And as you know, like my podcast really is focusing on highly sensitive women, and I'm
Mhm.
wondering if for highly sensitive women there is a because our sensory experience is a little more intensified, that if potentially menopause could be or perimenopause could be more difficult for women who are highly sensitive. And I don't know if that's something you can answer or what anything you've
I will
seen in your
say
work.
from a medical standpoint, I can't answer it, but from a personal standpoint, I can. Having
Mm,
myself
mm,
being an empath and also really, having a lot of friends who are into energy medicine and really kind of finding my own woo-woo aspect of life over the years and kind of admitting that I have some of these sensitivities and what I've seen over the
yeah.
years, I do believe that the women who tend to be highly sensitive tend to also feel things a lot more than, let's say, somebody who is not. And so
Yeah.
I've seen this not just with hormone changes, but also with like aches and pains in the body. And so I think
Yes.
that when you are highly sensitive, you're also more in tune to what's going on in the body and are able to pick that up. At the same time, I think the energies
Hmm.
around us also influence that. And I think if someone's already going through menopause, and they have some, and they're in the presence of somebody who may not have the best energy, I think that energy will rub off on them and can potentially make their menopausal symptoms worse. So I think if you're
Yeah.
a highly sensitive person, I think you got to look at a number of things like what is going on with you internally, and then also what is going on
Hmm.
in and around your environment, and which things can you change. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. Yeah. Because yeah. Well, and I think energetically, we're all picking up on energies from other people, but I think highly sensitive people tend to be more attuned to other people's energies on the whole. And that makes so much
Yeah.
sense to me. And so, what was it that pushed you to really focus on this area for women, just sort of pelvic health and yeah.
It's definitely one of those things where, I think Steve Jobs said you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And so,
Yep, makes sense.
everyone, a lot of times I get asked, like, what made you become a gynecologist who wants to look at vaginas all day long? And that's definitely was not my career goal as a young child. let alone
Right.
medicine. I mean, I grew up and I just happened to have an interest in medicine, but connecting the dots looking back, it all makes sense. Even from like a young age,
Mm.
at the age of 4, I remember there was like 4 or 5, there was a TV show that was on the TV back then. This was probably like mid 70s, called Emergency. And it was about an ambulance team out of California. And I remember loving that show as a kid.
Mm.
Like looking back, you kind of like, I was like, oh God, I can't believe my mom actually let me watch that as a child. It probably wasn't that
That's so
appropriate,
funny.
but I remember really being
Right.
interested in that. Same thing when my mom was pregnant with my sister. I was about 5 and a half. I remember like being obsessed with the books. She had these books that like had pictures of the
Mm.
baby inside the uterus and what the uterus. And I remember like looking at that book and like being like really interested in it. Still, when I said
Interesting.
it all makes sense looking back. And then even
Sure.
when I went to
Sure.
college, I knew I was interested in medicine. I didn't know which way I wanted to go. In fact, actually, I studied biology, but I thought I wanted to go into veterinary medicine. And being a New Jersey resident, there's no veterinary school. So I applied to veterinary school,
Mm.
and medical school was my backup plan, and did not get into veterinary school because they usually take people from their own state first. So I was
Interesting.
told, well,
Yeah.
move to another state, set up residency, and then reapply. But in the meantime, I got into
Mm.
medical school, and then I really just loved it. I thought I wanted to do pediatrics because that's kind of close to veterinary medicine, meaning that the babies can't tell you what's going on. So,
Sure.
and
Sure.
I found myself very frustrated with dealing with parents,
Mm.
especially in some of the inner cities where they were being given free formula and they were watering down the formula because for whatever
Mm.
reason they didn't want to go pick it up from the WIC program that we have in New Jersey for free. And I was like, like how, like you're getting this for free. Like, why wouldn't you take care of your child? I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
social issues there, but like I found myself very frustrated. And then I kind of just was drawn to some of the surgical subspecialties and found my way into gynecology and really
Yeah.
liked dealing with women. I actually started out in general surgery. And halfway through general surgery,
Okay.
I kind of realized it wasn't for me because general surgeons are amazing. You want them when your appendix has ruptured, but I find them to be very like much like body mechanics, like let's get in there and fix it and get out. There wasn't this warm,
Right.
fuzzy relationship. And
Relationship
so I
building.
would go
Right.
around. This was actually really funny. I would go around on my rounds in the hospital, and I really wanted to know about people's feelings. And I'd be like, so how do you feel now that your gallbladder is out? Like, how do you feel now that your appendix? It just wasn't that warm, fuzzy type of,
It wasn't the
yeah.
same.
But I
Right.
could
Right.
get
Right.
that in the
Needed.
relationships in the women's health. So I switched into
Mm.
gynecology. And then
Mm.
urogynecology, I didn't even know that was a field until my senior year.
Well, I was gonna say you have to share what that
Yeah.
is because
And
I'm
in
not
fact,
really
there's
sure.
only
Yeah.
1,500 urogynecologists in the United States. And I remember when I told my mom that I was going to do the fellowship in that, and she was like, what is urogynecology? Is it like European gynecology, like fancy gynecology, like
The
Euro
extra special,
Disney?
right?
And it's really a combination of urology and gynecology. So it has to
Yeah.
deal with the bladder. And in fact, actually, it's really everything in the pelvis, but more like bladder, bowel, reproductive organs, the muscles, the nerves. Traditionally, most
Mhm.
urogynecologists end up dealing with things like prolapse, where the organs can droop and drop from ligament
Yeah.
damage from childbirth or lifting heavy objects. They deal with incontinence issues, recurrent urinary tract infections, pelvic pain. So that's kind of,
Yeah.
we're like a super subspecialty. So,
Yeah, 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 but it feels as if well, I appreciate that more there has been more attention to that whole
mhm.
specialty, right? That pelvic health is really important to our overall health, but also to our sexual health. Like if we're I don't know, if we're in pain when we're having sex or if we're incontinent and so sex feels icky because we know, or prolapse even, right? Like, I don't know. It feels important that we're addressing these things with compassion and care and actually talking about them as because we know so many women suffer from these
Yeah,
things.
it's crazy. Like I remember in my office, I would have women come in and talk to me about the incontinence or the prolapse, and they'd be like, "Am I the only person that you've ever seen that has this?" And I'm like, "Nope, pretty much this is what I do all day long." And I mean, from a prolapse standpoint, 50% of women will have a prolapse at some point in their lives. And that
That's
is
wild.
definitely, forget about menopause not being talked about. Pelvic health is even more like
Yeah.
kind of quieted and hush hushed. And, and it is really, I would
Yeah.
love to, like, my goal in life would be number one, to let's talk about, be able to get to the point where you can talk about these things and people don't blush or get embarrassed. And there was a study actually it was actually done in Europe, but I'm sure it applies here, that 61% of women are uncomfortable saying the word vagina. But the fact is,
Hmm.
83% of us will have a problem down there at some point in
With our
our
vagina.
lives. So if we can't say the words, how do we ask for help?
Oh
So
gosh.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. It's
wild.
really,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I unfortunately, like, I think I
Wow.
say the word vagina so much, like I'm desensitized to it. So like sometimes I have to watch when the company I'm with just like, start talking about vaginas, and
Just
my poor teenage girls like are just like, "Mom," and I'm like, "Oh yeah." But really, I mean, it's
oops.
no big deal. It's just
Yeah.
another body part.
No,
I'm
it's
always
true.
in trouble on Facebook because I'll put something about vaginas, and then they'll tell me this word goes against community standards. I'm like, what do you want me to call it? Like, really?
Right. 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 Make up some, yeah,
Yeah. So I have to
ridiculous,
spell it
yeah.
now. When I remember, I have to spell it like V at symbol, like G exclamation point N-A, like, and I'm like, really, this is ridiculous.
Oh, oh my gosh, that is
Yeah.
insane. Well, and I think about too how many women I know who suffer from incontinence and how it feels as if it's pretty
It's very,
common.
very common. Yeah. And the thing is,
And I feel like,
there's tons of different options. So,
well, I was going to say, I feel like there are things you can do, and most people, at least the people I have known, they just like, oh, you just have to deal with it. We just have to suffer through and, manage it however we manage it. But also, there's sort of a shame aspect too. Like, I should be able to control this, even though it's not within your control because it's your body that's doing
yeah,
this.
I
Yeah.
know it's really a shame because I think a lot of people just go, "Oh, this is just get a natural part of getting older," and they just accept it.
Right. Right.
I mean, the
Right.
the adult diaper and pad industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I've had women who
Crazy.
don't leave their homes because they are embarrassed and didn't realize that they could do anything about it. And there's so many different treatments. I mean, anything from like physical therapy, supplements, medications, to the extreme doing surgery. But there's so many things in
Right.
between that. So
Yeah.
there is definite, like, I mean, I'm a big proponent of people seeing urogynecologists because I am one, but like I said, there's only 1,500 of us in the United States. So
Yeah.
urologist would be the next option, but like specifically finding one that does women's health, because sometimes the urologists focus just mainly on men's health, and they kind of miss the boat when it comes to some of the things with women's
Yeah.
health. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I hear that 100%. So for you, like if there were women out there that are listening who were struggling with some of the stuff we've talked about today, what would you offer to them? What would you like them to know?
I think the biggest thing is there's a misconception that hormones are the answer, and hormones are just a tool in our toolbox. And really, and
Mm,
the one thing that's driving me a little bit crazy right now is the number of these online companies that are popping up where you don't even see a practitioner. You're basically just putting in your information, and next thing you know, you're getting a prescription for hormones. Here's the thing: hormones don't work unless the body's prepared for it. And that means, I
mm,
always say, sex and stress can't coexist. So, sex meaning sex hormones, fertility, and even libido, that has to all happen and work well in a relaxed state. If there's any stressors happening, the body will convert those
Mm,
hormones into cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So even if you're taking hormones, if your body's stressed, and that can be mental stress or physical stress, and I'll go through what the stressors can be, like you can back convert it into cortisol. So that's why the hormones don't work. So the hormones are a tool, but they work better when we are in a relaxed state. So, what are the
wow.
stressors? The stressors can
Hmm.
be anything from not getting enough sleep, not drinking enough water, eating inflammatory foods. So anything that's processed, sugars. I tell my patients that your food should fall into four categories. That your food should have at some point walked, swam, flew, or grew. Because Doritos don't grow on trees. There's no free range Twinkies. Like, so if it fits into
That's
those four
true. That.
categories, those are considered whole foods and they're healthy. Mental stress, physical stress, like of a disease and illness. When the pandemic happened, we saw people's hormones go crazy because of the combination,
Oh,
the
bet.
virus and or the stressor of the vaccine. And mental
Yeah.
stress comes in so many different, it could be like work stress, relationship stress, financial stress. So once again, doing the basics and looking at how can we decrease our level of stress so that if we choose to do hormones, then it works better. One of the things I
Yeah.
like to incorporate into my programming is I actually test everybody their gut microbiome. And that's what a passion of mine is, the
Mm,
microbiome, which is the organisms that live on and in our body. And they're finding that they really have a tremendous impact on our health, our wellness, or even our mental health. Because if our gut bacteria is off, 90% of our happy hormone is made in our gut. So if our gut is off, we're more
mm,
prone to depression, anxiety, mental health issues.
makes sense. Yeah.
80% of our immune system is made in our gut. So if our gut is off, we're more likely to get ill. So I found that over the years, just doing this for people, that same thing. When I just gave them hormones and they didn't work, because that's how I was originally trained, like, all right, just give them hormones. And I'd be like, well, why? But if I know that their gut is
Mm,
balanced, and most people do have some gut imbalances, if I can balance their gut and decrease that while working on lifestyle things, and then we add the hormones into everything, everything works so much better. So,
that makes so much sense, though, right? I mean, like our bodies are, they know what to do, but if we are under distress or under stress all the time, they're going to react to that
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually, the
Wow.
thing I forgot to mention
Mm,
is, which is really kind of scary, is the number of chemicals that we're exposed to on a daily basis. And some of these chemicals can actually disrupt our hormones. So there is a wonderful website that I
oh,
recommend
yeah.
people take a look at. It's called the Environmental Working Group, or EWG.org. And you can go look up your beauty products and see if you're using things that are healthy, because things that we're putting on our bodies sometimes can be affecting our hormones too.
That makes sense too. I mean, you think about just the impact of, I was just reading an article about
Yes.
plastics and how on every level they're entering our bloodstream and our whole bodies. So it's a little terrifying because there's so much plastic out there.
Yeah, the environmental toxin is that you go down that rabbit hole. It's very frustrating because there's really at our level of modern life, there's we can only actively
Do
try
so
to
much.
reduce our exposure. We're not going to get rid of it. It's
Yeah.
around us.
Yeah.
It's in our food sources. I mean, this is a better idea why eating organic, if you can afford to eat organic, is better because of the insecticides and pesticides and how they can disrupt our hormones. There's only
Yeah.
so much we can do. Also, on the environmental working group, they have a list. It's called the Dirty Dozen. So it's the
Mm.
12 foods that tend to be the highest in toxins. And so
Oh,
even if you can
interesting.
just cut those foods out and replace them with organic options, you're better off. Yeah.
Hmm. I'll have to check it
Yeah.
out. I'll have to check it out. Well, if listeners wanted to find out more about you, Betsy, how would they do that?
Yeah, so I am on every platform and social media. If you just look up Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, Betsy, and then Green and Leaf, you'll find me someplace. So please follow. And, I love interacting with people. So on there. Also, my practice is called the International Pause Institute. And you can find it at pause, like PAUSE, like menopause, but without the pauseinstitute.com. On that website, there's a free hormone quiz, which kind of gives you, just by answering a couple questions, gives you an idea of where you may be. And then also I have a website called the Pelvic Floor Store, which I started in 2018 because I had a patient who wanted a centralized place to buy all the products that I was recommending instead of going to this website, that website. So it was brilliant. Nice. So I started the Pelvic Floor Store. And actually, if you use the code AWAKEN, all uppercase, you can get 10% off. And I sent you that link.
Yeah, you did. I will include that in the show notes. I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Oh, and last thing, I didn't even I always forget to tell people this. So this past year, I created a menopause rock album that you can find on you can find on Apple and Spotify. It started off as a joke between me and my friends. We're like, there's not enough songs out there celebrating like midlife women. Like, there should be more songs because there's more of us. And so it started as a joke. And next thing you know, we ended up kind of writing it and found people to sing it. And we produced the album. And we're like, it just became like a fun thing to do. And then we put it out, and it's called Menopause Memo.
Nice.
And you can find it on, like I said, you can find it on like all the platforms. Oh, and one last thing. I'm restarting my podcast. I had one in the past, but I'm starting one in very soon called 40s Forward. And you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts. So
awesome. Well, I will include all those, all that information in the show notes, and I hope people will check it out. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Biz. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, that was fascinating. I always appreciate just learning more about what's happening to our bodies as we age and as we move through menopause. And I thought that Betsy's comments about how stress impacts so much of our system, whether it's our symptoms of perimenopause or menopause, or whether hormones are going to really work well for us if we're carrying a lot of stress, none of that's going to help as much as it could. And I think that's probably something that we can take to heart for all of our wellness needs. If we're carrying a ton of stress and a ton of cortisol is building up in our bodies, like, it's unhealthy, but it also is destabilizing. We end up anxious, depressed, not sleeping, all the things. So it's really important to be looking at your life holistically in terms of, what stressors are there and what you can potentially eliminate or at least minimize, because that will make you take better care of you. Well, again, if you're interested in joining me and other highly sensitive women on a monthly basis through my membership, go to my website, elizabethcush.com, and click on the Circle of Sacred Sensitivity to find out more. I'll see you back here next time on the podcast. Thanks for listening to the Awaken Your Wise Woman podcast. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Music by Andy Cush, sound editing by Laura Disler, and show notes by Kathy Cush. If you'd like more information about me, Biz Cush, and the resources shared today, go to awakenyourwisewoman.com.